Are you a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, or a person wanting to become one of the millions of self employed people? Well, on this Steve Beaman show, we're going to give you the 10 keys to making sure that your entrepreneurial is a successful one. I've spent 40 years of my life doing this, so I think I've got some ideas for you. So stay tuned for this edition of the Steve Beaman show. What is being an entrepreneur? What is the draw that we as Americans have to having our own business? I don't know. I've literally spent 40 years of my life. In fact, almost all of my whole adult life as an entrepreneur in a self-employed circumstance. I've had some great success. I've made a great deal of money. I've also lost money in businesses and had great failures. In fact, I'm dealing with a situation right now out of a failure of one of those companies. But nonetheless, it has been the joy of my life to be self-employed. It's an endeavor that it has rewards of countless ways, just so many, from time that you control of your own to being able to have your ideas promoted and your thoughts come up, to a fruition or come to fruition for a real company. It's a wonderful thing, but it is filled with highs and lows and risks and rewards and all these good things. So about 15 years ago now, I gave a speech in one of the chambers of commerces, and I talked about what I call the 10 keys to success in independent business. And these were keys drawn from my life's experience. And I think they're universally true. So if you're a solopreneur or an entrepreneur wannabe, I think these are things that give you, in effect, a masterclass on the types of things you need to think about as you build your business. So I'm anxious to share these with you today. Again, this is right from the heart, so I don't have a lot of notes. I'm just going to go through it as best I can to give you what I believe are the keys to your success. Now, I do have this also as a workbook. I'm working on a book on it, some other things. And if it's the kind of thing you'd like to learn more about, write to me at steve@stevebeaman.com, and I'll get you more information on this as a program, because I think there's a lot here to unpack. It's much more than I can do in a simple podcast, but it's an area that all of us who are involved in the simple pleasure of self-employment need to understand. So let's jump right in. I'm going to go through these 10. And again, this is a lot more than a podcast worth of content, but we'll see what we can do. The first idea, and I want to give you a start-off story. Back in the 90s, when I was running and partnered with some great guys and we had a very successful company, I jokingly one time said, I want to write a book on the guaranteed key to success. Notice singular, the guaranteed key to success. I wanted to write about a 200-page book. The first 100 pages were blank. The last 100 pages were blank. On that very centered middle of piece of paper, it had the words, work really hard for a really long period of time. That's it. That is the first singular key to success in self-employment or in any career, whether you're with your family and your kids or anything else. Hard work is something you can't get out of. I know a lot of people in our generation today and in the society we live in don't really respect the old work ethic. But I will tell you, no entrepreneur has ever made it happen without hard work at the core. It's the ability to get up with drive and passion and do your job, whether you want to or not, because you know it needs to get done. There are no hours on the clock. It's all work. There are no days of the week. It's all work. And it's very hard sometimes to recharge yourself in that kind of schedule. But launching a business is a full-time effort, and full-time doesn't adhere to the schedule. In fact, I've often heard it said when people are asked, what's it mean to be an entrepreneur? And it's simply that we're willing to work 80 hours a week to get a job that other people working for companies can do in 40. We love to work, and it's our passion and it's our inbreeding. It's whatever you want to call it, but hard work. It's the first key to this whole thing. Discipline and self-discipline is much more powerful than motivation. I talked to you recently about the psychology of winning from Dennis Waitley and the need to have self-discipline and self-awareness in that sense. You can't shortcut this key. I mean, your discipline, your self-discipline, and your willingness to work hard and get the job done is at the very core of the success you're going to have. And if you talk about luck, there's an old adage, the luckier I am, or the harder I work, the luckier I get. You can count on that. It's just a fact. Hard work is unmatched and unparalleled in the characteristics of an individual who succeeds in business. That passion to get the job done, to see your vision come to life. It's important, and it's something that we have to look at our own business and our own lives and say, what effort are we willing to commit to this? If it's a hobby and we treat it as such, it will become a hobby type income. And the problem is when you run a business as a hobby, it typically won't work. But nonetheless, you have to make a decision as an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, or a family leader. You're going to have to commit the work ethic to make that endeavor work. It's incredibly important. It's not surpassed by anything else. So hard work is your first key. And again, I could tell you story after story after story in my life where hard work made it work. When I've tried to do it without that, when I've tried to outsource the work, to hire other people to do the work, it hasn't worked nearly so well. So the idea of starting your company, be ready for a monumental work effort. And that's absolutely critical to it. I'm going to tell you kind of a summary point, but in my mind, and as you think about it, hard work is never wasted. Never. It's a down payment on every breakthrough that you're going to have. So hard work, key number one. Number two, and I touched on this in my podcast about the psychology of winning, but embrace a positive attitude. Again, early in my career, the idea of having a positive self-awareness system and a positive belief system and a positive view of your future is absolutely critical if you're going to manifest it in a successful business. Very rare is the person who doesn't have that positive view about their business that ends up succeeding. It's very rare. People who succeed because they believe in their mission, they believe in their product, they believe in their service, and they have a belief that it's good for others, it's beneficial to others, and therefore that positiveness carries them forward when things are down. No business has ever worked without hiccups. They go up and they go down. It's your attitude in those tough times, the positive attitude to say, I can do it. It's that attitude that will carry you through when everything else says no. I have had so many experiences of this in my life. It's a mindset that is the absolute competitive advantage in your business. It's going to come down to your attitude. If you're working hard and you have a sustainably good attitude about your work, you've knocked down two of the keys that are so critical. But the attitude thing is very, very important. And I want to go back to the Psychology of Winning podcast. When I learned more about Dennis Waitley's work in that program, I began to understand the importance of positive self-awareness, of positive constructs of our own being. It's never possible to overstate the importance of it. And I hope that as you go through your entrepreneurial journey and you go through your solopreneurship, or you go through building your family, you indoctrinate yourself with the concepts of positive mental attitude. It's not to be Pollyannish about things and think everything's good. Sometimes we have bad, but it's the ability to keep in perspective the bad to make it be good as it relates to your business. It was, I think, Thomas Edison, one time said, how many times did you fail in doing the light bulb? And he said, well, I never really failed. I found 99 ways not to make a light bulb. It's a different attitude. When Milton Hershey failed his first couple of times in business, I think he went bankrupt twice. He didn't quit. He knew he wanted to be in that business, and he wanted to make a chocolate bar that was edible. So he created milk chocolate. But the idea of attitude carries everybody through. Talk to Steve Jobs at Apple. When things were at the darkest, it was his attitude that kept him going. In all of the businesses we have, it's your attitude and your passion and your desire to make that happen because you believe it will achieve a goal. And I would argue the most successful goals are when you can see how it will benefit others. Again, I've made a public comment that, in fact, in my last podcast, or one of them, I talked about how in the money I've made, it's never been because I was seeking money. I was seeking to help somebody solve a problem. And I believed in that. And I believed in it enough that when I got 10 no's in a row, I'd fight for the 11th yes. So you got to have that attitude that says, I'm going to keep going because I believe in this. And if you believe in yourself and in your product and your services strongly enough, you can oftentimes overcome the obstacles that will be thrown at you just from the standard course of doing your business. Attitude is the atmosphere that you're going to create for everything you touch. Keep it strong, and people will follow you, your customers and your employees and your family. Never give up on that. Never say die. You know, it was one time said, tomorrow's the first day of the rest of your life. If you're going through a tough time right now, and many are, I get it. Well, just remember that if you wake up tomorrow morning, you've got the benefit of benefits because you live to fight another day. Never give up. Never say die, because when you did, you neither win nor live. You give up, you give up. Don't do that. Have an attitude that says, I can and I will, and I'll do it for the reasons that are the right reasons for the benefit of those I serve. That attitude will carry you through. Trust me, it works. And after 40 years of watching it, I know it does. So the first two keys of hard work and attitude tie into the third. And when I talked about this in the speech I made, it resonated with people. And that was about rejection and learning to handle it. Rejection isn't personal. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. Again, think about Thomas Edison with the light bulb. You know, you had 90 ways not to build a light bulb. In sales, especially, if you're in a sales-centric business or marketing-centric, you're going to get an awful lot of no's potentially before you get to yes. I think the average buyer says no 3 or 4 times before they say yes. A lot of times they don't understand the solution that you're selling because you haven't presented the solution properly. Well, keep your attitude up and don't give up. Take that rejection as a learning tool. Learn why they didn't like your solution. What questions did they have you should have answered better? Teach it, take it as a learning, teaching environment. It is. It's not personal, even though we all think it is. And I've been there. I get it. I've been there so often that I could look you in the eye and say, the hell, it's not personal. Yes, it is. But we have to keep it in perspective. They don't know you. When they say no to you, it's not you, it's your proposition. They don't understand the problem that you're trying to fix, or they don't understand the solution to the problem you're trying to provide. Either way, that rejection is just part of living. And there isn't an entrepreneur out there who hasn't gone through it or won't go through it. And it could be rejection from a supplier, from a banker, from a marketing agency, from a customer. The rejection is all around you. But learning to handle it is as important a key to your future success as your hard work and your positive mental attitude. So you can chalk it up and say it's a third key, because it absolutely is. The ability to handle rejection and handle that downstroke will keep you going time after time after time. I mean, think of it. It's feedback more than failure. And, the ones who succeed overwhelmingly aren't immune to rejection. They just learn not to take it personally. And so I would tell you it's a third key. And I could go through the hundreds of reasons in my life I believe it to be so. But I can tell you personally, learning to handle rejection is as important as your work and your attitude. So learn how to handle it. And when you're developing your idea as an entrepreneur or solopreneur, realize you're going to get said no to an awful lot of times. But that's okay, because you got to figure out the 99 ways not to build the light bulb. So you've got 3 of them: hard work, positive attitude, handling rejection. Number 4 is to stay humble. And this is really hard because you have to stay humble, especially in victory. There are countless examples of entrepreneurs who've made it. They've built their company, they've sold it off, they have a huge pot of money in the bank. And because they think they did it once, they don't look honestly as their ability to do it a second and third time. There are an awful lot of fortunes that have been lost because people thought they could do it again. Being humble and being honest with yourself is absolutely critical. What are your real strengths? What are your real weaknesses? What made this business that you succeeded with succeed? Was it you? Was it the market? Was it the product? Was it the economic environment, the political environment? Was it the customers at that time? There are an awful lot of variables here. So if you're in a position of having a successful company, I urge you to consciously think about humility. And I got 10 fingers pointing back at me when I tell these things. There have been times in my work when I tried to shortcut work. It didn't work. There have been times when my attitude got out of whack and it messed with me big. There are times I took rejection very personally. And there are times that I've looked and not been very humble. And I can tell you, every time I've turned my back on these ideas, it ends badly. So the ability to stay humble and realize where you came from and realize that you could be back there real quick. You're never better than anybody else. Just because you've built a successful company doesn't give you license to treat other people poorly. They're every bit as important as you are. The people who helped you build the company, be they vendors or employees, customers, they're important people too. Don't let your success go to your head. Never forget, in Rome, when the generals came back from battle, they had a paid servant slave standing in the chariot behind them. And that slave was there to tell them, you're a fleeting thing. Don't let the crowd get your ego up. You're just a soldier. It happened to them. It can happen to you. So don't let your humbleness get out of whack, especially when you succeed. Be confident because it creates momentum. Confidence is always good, but humility preserves that momentum and keeps it going in the hard times and the good times. Arrogance is blinding to entrepreneurs, and it's so easy to slip into this. It's one of the spiritual laws that I've talked about too, and one of the laws of stewardship is to keep the arrogance out of your system as best you can. It's very difficult, but try to do it. And this is where coaches can come in and mentors, because you've got to be humbled to say there's an awful lot that has to do with the success of this business. Yes, I drove the bus. Yes, I took the risk. It's why when I get down on people for the criticisms of the Elon Musks and the Jeff Bezoses of the world, granted, they didn't maybe build the exact product. Jeff didn't code Amazon all the way, and Elon didn't build the rocket engine, but they had the vision, the dream, and took the risk to do it. That can lead to arrogance when you succeed, and you don't want to be there. So put hard work together with a good attitude, together with handling the rejection, and then go into keeping humble all the time and learning that confidence is good, but don't let it turn into it. Humility isn't weakness. It's not at all. It sometimes is the wisdom that we need to recognize that no one wins alone. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. And again, if you let it get out of hand and slip into an arrogance mode, you stand at risk of losing everything you've created. So I can't stress enough, add humility to your keys or your quivers in the air, or however you want to look at it. Number 5 is to run a business with integrity. And again, this seems so common sense. A great example of this is Berkshire Hathaway. Warren Buffett has run a business with very high integrity. Integrity means aligning yourself with people who share your vision and share the importance of integrity in running their businesses. Again, from personal experience, I can tell you that when a company gets out of that line, you lose. And you can say integrity isn't always about being dishonest. Sometimes it's an ethical lapse that happens in a reaction out of a dangerous or hard circumstance. It's the whole thing, you can't be a little bit pregnant. Once you go down a slope, you stay on that slope. I've been around 40 years. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. Some of the ugly I've allowed to be created on my own because I forgot that in order to enforce integrity, it's an absolute. And as painful it is to force downstream to your employees and the people that work with you, you have to enforce the integrity of the operation always. It's easy when you're succeeding. It's much harder when you're scrambling to succeed or scrambling to survive. But as a key to your success, the fifth one, never forget it, because that need to keep integrity throughout the operations of everything you do. It's hard because not everybody's going to share that idea with you, but it's an absolute must. And again, the consequence of not running your business with the kind of integrity that you want is a death knell. So again, all of these, every one of these keys, that's why they're keys. They're so important. They're critically important to you. And in running your business, if you're not running it with the reputational ethic that you think is important, it'll come back to bite you in 10 years, 15 years. It will end up biting you. So integrity your business can never grow beyond the character of you. And again, I've been involved in everything. I've been in private equity for a long time. I've seen businesses grow and some fail. And I can tell you the ones that succeed are run with the highest of ethics. The ones that fail usually aren't. Now, again, I'm not saying they're dishonest and cheating, but ethics is a higher standard. It's a character standard to say, I'll always do what's right in the interest of the stakeholders in that business, not putting yourself first. Very few business owners do it in such a way that they put others ahead of themselves. And that character is all you've got in building your business. So think of it as a key that you consciously focus on. Your everyday thinking, is my character being upheld today? Am I running a business with a reputation that I want to have publicized? Imagine there's a camera on you every minute of the day. Is your business running like you'd like others to see it? Sometimes it's harder than it seems, but it's important for you to understand that dynamic and keep pushing forward. Keep pushing forward on the integrity of your business. I think it's difficult for me to state the importance in some ways of each of these. And as we grow together, you'll get to know my personal experiences. But I can tell you, in the circumstances in which the most money's been lost, it's because the integrity was breached for one reason or another. The sixth thing is to create external accountability. And again, this goes to the ethics and it goes to everything else. But there is a need, especially as a solopreneur or a partnership, for you to have some kind of external board, a board of advisors, a board of mentors, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't have to be a formal board of directors, but you need some group of peers. And this is where the tech group, which became Vistage, that's why they became so popular. It creates external accountability. It's very difficult to sit behind your desk in the quiet of your office. And the old thing, it's lonely at the top. It absolutely is lonely at the top. And you make decisions in a vacuum. That's really hard. If you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. So an outside external accountability board, it could be a family member. It could be, again, a Vistage International, big fan of that kind of stuff. If you look at that need to have an external sounding board, it will improve the quality of your decisions. It will slow down your I'll say, instinct to react. Most of us who've been in entrepreneurial visions in our lives have a natural reaction mode where a problem comes up and we react. Well, sometimes somebody outside has to slow us down a bit and say, have you thought about the consequences of that? Because often we get in a position where we've been obviously made good decisions because we're here to here to here to here to here. But then something gets derailed and you now have a problem. Well, the issue is, how do you respond to it? Notice I said respond, not react. Many of us in the entrepreneurial mindset react to those problems without always thinking them through thoroughly. And that can be, again, devastating to your decision making. So creating an external board, having some kind of external relationship that can really review what you're doing. You've got to be honest. You got to have that honest integrity between the two of you. But if you can have somebody or some small group, a biblical group can work with you on this. A lot of churches have peer groups that can meet. Again, Vistage, there are other things. Write me at steve@stevebeaman.com if you want to talk more about it. But have an external board. Have somebody who can look at your work and say, what you're doing is good, but have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Because that sounding board will help you a lot. I'm going to digress a minute and talk about this idea of brainstorming. Again, all of us who've been in the entrepreneurial world have lived with this issue. And I'm going to try to give you a graphical display. This is the proverbial white sheet of paper. There's nothing on it. So we, the entrepreneurs, are the ones who start, and we start writing. And we say, this is my vision. It's my new computer idea, my software idea, my food idea. But we're starting with a blank sheet of paper. It's the way our minds work. The problem you have is as it grows, there are very, very few people who can also create a blank sheet of paper into something tangible. It's a quality we have that's unique. We're idea people. But to get that behind you and to get people who understand that and can brainstorm with you is very rare. And I would urge that in this creating the external accountability board, you absolutely look for people who can openly and honestly just brainstorm with you. Because you're going to get to the point where problems come up, you've got to find a solution, and they are frequently out of the box, so to speak. You have to be able to have that honest discussion and have them honestly critique your decision. Because if you're like many entrepreneurs, you're going to react and go that way when, yeah, it made sense, but you should have thought it through more because a little more patience might have led to a better decision. So creating an outside board, an external board for you is hugely important. So when you start to look, and these are keys, they're each independently important, but together they open the door and the lock to Pandora's box of the entrepreneur, right? You work hard, you maintain a positive attitude, you learn to handle rejection, you run with high integrity, you create accountability boards. I mean, you start to see that these things form a matrix of characteristics that are unbeatable. And that's why they're so important. The seventh thing is to build beyond yourself. And this is really, really hard. We're all limited by our own minds and our own positionings and our own thoughts about ourselves. In order to build a successful venture, you have to learn to think beyond yourself. And I'll give you an example that something that I experienced 30 years ago. I was at a train station in Chicago, and I walked out of the train station and I saw a sea of people in raincoats and hats, just a sea of people. But I came to understand real quick that I was seen by them as just one of the people in that crowd. It's all perspective. When you're building your business, you've got to keep the mindset of a bigger venture than you. Don't be limited by yourself. Think of it as an organization standing on its own that can grow beyond your capabilities. You have the ability to hire smart people. You have the ability to build better tools and systems. You have the ability to build something bigger than you. And that ability to wisely think beyond your own abilities can take your company to heights you've never seen before. Do you think, again, going back to some really big examples of things, when Henry Ford started, he had a vision for a Ford, a car in every garage type thing, but he didn't know how to get there. He thought beyond himself. He thought, how can I put a car in every garage? How can I create a car as a vehicle for the average person? And that passion drove him. But he was certainly thinking bigger than himself. Go down to any venture. Again, Musk is, a poster child for this stuff. He thinks about things much bigger than himself. He thinks about objectives and goals of putting people on Mars. These are big visions. And when you put them together again with all of these keys and you say, I'm going to learn to think of the business as a separate entity from me with a vision and a dream driven by me. You're driving the bus. You don't have to do all the work. You got an engine and you got tires and you got, roofs and floors and walls and windows. You got a lot of parts. But by you believing your business can be more than you and allowing it to grow to its natural limits, you'll get a much bigger venture out of what you might otherwise have thought as a small mom and pop. This scalability of the business won't happen if you're holding it too tight. I've been around small businesses before, many of whom said, I don't really want to grow. The problem is if you're not growing, you're dying, truly. But what happens is they get to a point of contentment where they're at the point of their own skill set and they're content. But I would argue that they need to leap that into the next level of growth. And to do that, they've got to think outside of themselves. They've got to think about the business's best interest and how does this business in its solutions for its problems and its vision, how does it work for a bigger mass audience? You can think about this when you get bottlenecks in your systems. How do you build, again, how do you create the systems and the processes to get you beyond that? It's just a matter of thinking beyond yourself and putting your business first. Think about this idea, and I've said it in speeches before. Freedom in business comes when the engine runs without you at the wheel. It's a very rarefied space that you have a company and you don't have to be there every day because you've put the right people in the right places and the right systems and structures so that you can build this thing to its abilities, not to yours. And that's a critically important component to what you're trying to do. So again, think about this as your seventh key to unlocking the entrepreneurial experience. Number 8, and I want to go back to my psychology of winning statements where I said, the money I've made in life, I made not because I pursued money. It's because I pursued purpose. And I state that as a key here, number 8, let purpose drive your profits. If you're trying to go out and make money with your job, you'll never do it. Money is a terrible master. There's never enough of it. It's always harder to keep than you think, and it's not rewarding. If you have a business that solves a problem for a customer, and that could be a better cookie, I don't care, a better wheel, a better computer, a better app. If you're making someone's life better because you have this thing, run with that 100 miles an hour. You're not doing it for the money. You're doing it for the passion of the product or service, and that will make it work. When we had our company on Wall Street, Chicago Investment Analytics, I used to tell my 2 partners that as head of sales, I felt very much like, and I've used this analogy, and it's a weak analogy, so forgive me for that, but I think it's true. If you're a Christian and you believe that Jesus is the Christ, therefore he is the living Son of God, and no man comes to the Father but through him. Think about the ramifications of that for a second. Your passion with that product, if you will, should be to go out and preach the word everywhere all the time. If you believe in it, you'll do that. You don't do it for the money, you do it for the mission. Now, I would argue in business, it's maybe at a different level, but it's the same concept. If you believe in what you're doing, do it because you believe in it. The money will come. It will. And I know that's hard because we all need money to live. And believe me, I've been in the position 50 times where I was like, I got to make $1. How do I make $1? How to make $1 will make you $1. How to create a vision will make you a bunch of money. Set out to do your vision as your passion. I can't tell you how strongly I mean that. If you set out to make $1, you'll make one. You set out to create a vision, you'll change the world. Again, it goes back to that last one of thinking about the business different than yourself. So as an 8th key, let purpose drive your product. Purpose, let me throw it in this sense. Purpose puts profits into a legacy. Let your legacy be one of purpose. Let it be fulfilled. Let it be deep. Let it be contented. Number 9, see your business, and it ties back to the earlier one on scalability, but see your business from the outside in. As I said in that example of me walking down the street and thinking of others looking at me, how do you see your business as an outsider? How does it serve its customers? How does it treat its employees? How does it treat its shareholders? If you look at it from the outside in, you'll get a different perspective. And you need to be able to do that. You need to be able to remove yourself from the internal operations of that business and look at it objectively from the outside. It's why, again, an independent board will help you do this. But you've got to be able to see it as others see it. Again, I come to you out of the real world. I've seen great success and I've seen great failure. And as I look through these keys that I've preached my whole life, I can tell you that in the failures, these things were violated. Not enough time was spent looking from the outside in. Not enough time was given to an accountability board. Not enough time was given to the ethic of the business. Not enough work was put in. I mean, all kinds of things. In the successful one, they all lined up. 10 keys that all turn that lock. You got to get all 10 of these to line up in your business. Because if you do, the sky's the limit. And you can truly experience the American dream as your dream. I hear so many people today say the American dream's dead. No, it's not. It's achievable by those who believe that they can do it and who adhere to these 10 principles. And I'm telling you, that's how important these are. These aren't just 10 statements in a book. These are 10 keys to live your business by. I believe it to my core because I've seen it. I've lived this experience. The 10th one and final is to have faith. And I will tell you, I come out of a very devout Christian background. I've not always lived it. I've slipped into sinful patterns in my life. I've done all kinds of things. I've lived high and low and every other way. But faith, when it comes down to faith in yourself, in your family, in your business, it will keep you going. And a little prayer goes a long way in building some of these companies. I will forever be grateful to those who prayed at the early times of the beginning of my company on Wall Street. I believe faith is a driving influence of this because I happen to believe it's all true too. I believe that Jesus is the Son of God. And I know people watching these podcasts may not like that, but I don't care. I believe it to my core. And I know in the times my business succeeded, there was a lot of faith and a lot of prayer going on. At the times they didn't succeed, there wasn't a lot of faith and a lot of prayers. It's the 10th key that is the locking thing around the whole thing. It's part of your purpose in life. It's part of where you drive your value of profits. Your faith system will drive everything in your ethics of the business, in your integrity of the business. So keep your faith at the forefront. Never be shy about it. Don't be embarrassed about it. Don't be, well, that's business. No, they go hand in hand. I can only tell you in my successes and in my failures. When my successes worked, these lined up. In my failures, they didn't. Now, you'll choose your own faith system. I can't, I'm not here to preach you into believing something. I wish I could, but I can't. But you got to ask yourself, what keeps you going when it feels inevitable that failure is there? What's going to keep you going when you face that mountain? Again, I'll digress. You've heard of the IQ, the intelligence quotient, and the EQ, the emotional quotient. I think they're both super, but they're lacking. There's a third Q, and it's called the AQ. It's the adversity quotient. This is the one that you look up at a mountain. Some people will go 10 feet up and say, wow, look how high I am. I'm done. I'm as high as I want to go. Other people will keep climbing because I'll go a little higher. Oh, now I'm 50 feet up and now it's a little scary. So I think I'm done. There are those of you who, with a very high adversity quotient, who just keep climbing. And you could argue that that's highly tied to faith, because we know we have a safety net. It may not be money, but at the end of the day, there's a faithful safety net. So this faith drives that final closure to these 10 principles. But I want to kind of wrap this podcast up by just going back through these 10. So if you look at starting a business or running your business, you're a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, or you're running a family, which is a business, or you're employed by a company and you're saying, how do I take myself to the next level? Hard work, handling rejection, building integrity, keeping an attitude, keeping humble, keeping an outside advisory board, keeping faith. I have a list of the 10. I mean, I wrote literally, these are experiential, so they're ingrained in my head, but I don't want to miss any when I read them back. So work, positive attitude, rejection and the importance of that, staying humble, especially in victory, the business of integrity, external accountability, building beyond yourself. That's one I typically will forget when I'm talking about this off the top of my head. And letting purpose drive profits. Throw these in with faith, and you've got a combination lock that is perfectly situated for your future. Let these drive you. Don't make the mistakes I've made, and live from the good that I've done. I've enjoyed the success most people dream of. And it's because these keys lined up. They have to. Because if they don't, you're going to go down the path of experiencing the failure. And that's a painful thing, which you'll learn these keys come back into play. So if you'd like to learn more about it, if you'd like to have a personal discussion with me, send me a note at steve@stevebeaman.com. I would love to get with you and do a private session on any of these 10, because the future of your business and your prosperity relies on it. And I know that to be true. So part of this podcast is about politics and economics and business and the digital transformation of what's going on in the world. I just finished a new book on the coming digital economy. Things are changing fast. To stay ahead of that, you've got to have foundational principles, and these 10 give you that for your business. So I hope you'll take it to heart. I hope you get a chance to share this podcast around with your friends, and really keep in touch with me through Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or wherever you see these. But I appreciate your time. I really do. I love talking with you. I love the comments that I get and the questions. So keep them coming, please. Remember, it's steve@stevebeaman.com. And thank you once again for watching this episode of The Steve Beaman Show. We'll see you next time. As I often say, stay strong, stay sovereign, and stay free.